The Legend Reborn by Scotimus. Chapter 1. Pain. Pain in her right arm. This pain that came about 2 weeks after she had put her prosthetic on, and had continued to come plague her every night, robbing her of precious sleep. This had been going on for a whole week and a half now. She knew this wasn't phantom pain either. No, this pain was in the remaining half of her right arm, and this wasn't a normal pain. This wasn't the aching pain that she would feel with phantom pains. This felt like the whole inside of her right arm was on fire, as if her right arm was about to spontaneously combust. She tried to tell her father, but he had insisted that it was just all in her head. This was definitely not in her head. This pain was very real, and she wished that it would just go away, but it never did. Instead, it got worse with each passing night. She didn't know where or why this pain had come. She looked over to her right to spy a digital clock with bright blue numbers reading 3:45 a.m. She breathed a heavy sigh. Just a few more hours. Just a few more hours of this hell. Then I can sleep. Her tired eyes shifted towards the ceiling. The pain usually stopped somewhere between 5 to 6 a.m. She brought her left hand up to rub across her face with a pained groan. Even when she does get to sleep, it's only for a few hours before her father comes to wake her up. She tells him again and again about the pain, but he never listens. He tells her that training will make her feel better, that it will take her mind off of whatever is bothering her. But if RWBY was dealing with this pain, he would actually listen to her and do anything he could to help her. The blonde amputee thought bitterly. A few moments after her thought, a throbbing pain entered her head. Yang groaned in agony. Come on. Really now? The arm was bad enough. All I gotta deal with this shitty headache? She was not pleased with this new form of pain. It seemed that life was intended on making her as miserable as possible. Yang promised to herself that if she made it out of this, she was going to viciously maim the nearest thing. She looked over to the clock again to see the bright blue numbers reading 3:47 a.m. The amputee let out a growl of frustration. It seems that time was intent on making her as miserable as possible too. She rolled her eyes back up to the ceiling. She would just have to wait. It was the only thing she could do. After several hours, the pain in both her arm and her head had begun to dissipate. Yang breathed out a sigh of relief. She was looking forward to sleep, looking forward to an escape from reality, even if it would only be for a few hours before her father came to wake her. But those few hours were precious to her. She looked over to her clock. 5:50 a.m. Yang shifted her gaze back upwards. She could feel herself being pulled into unconsciousness, and she welcomed it. In mere moments, sleep had claimed her. Finally, she was granted her small but precious reprieve from life. That is, if the nightmare stayed away. A doorknob turned, and the door opened to reveal a tall, blonde man. He walked over to his daughter's sleeping form, and with an outstretched hand, he gently shook Yang. She responded with a tired groan. Come on, Yang, time to wake up. Yang opened her eyes. She could already feel how lethargic she was without moving. She looked over to her father to see his smiling face. How the hell can he be smiling at me when I look like shit? Had a rough night, huh? Don't worry, a good breakfast and some training will eventually make you fine again. That's what you've been saying for the past week and a half now, and nothing's fine. If anything, I'm getting worse. Taiyang looked down at his daughter with a smile. Nonsense, Yang. This whole thing you're experiencing is just in your head. I know you can get past this little setback. He turned around and started walking towards the door. He stopped at the doorway and turned his head back towards his daughter. Just you watch. Someday this will be a memory you're gonna laugh at. Now hurry up and get ready while I make breakfast. And with that, Taiyang had left. Yang sighed. It was the same thing all the time. It was as if her father lived in his own little world and refused to come out of it and actually listen to her. With a loud yawn, Yang stood up and swung her leg over to the side of her bed. She sat there, staring at the wall of her bedroom for a few moments before finally standing up. She winced as she could feel her knees creaking from fatigue. A few seconds after standing up, She began to make her way over to the end table where her clock and prosthetic laid. Yang stared at the metallic arm. When she first put it on, it had felt great. It felt like she never lost an arm to begin with. It felt so weightless and didn't screw with her balance like she thought it would. It seemed that she was healing and that things would be alright. But then something happened. Something changed in her that she couldn't explain at all. She began to feel hot flashes and minor aches in her right arm. Eventually, those hot flashes turned into what felt like a raging inferno, like someone had put her arm in an oven and turned the dial all the way up. Yang had grown to hate this metal arm of hers in the time when these painful charges began to occur. Now it felt cold and unnatural. Now whenever she put it on, it would feel heavy. She would often feel pain where it was attached. It felt like her own body was rejecting the prosthetic for whatever reason that was beyond her understanding. In the week and a half since it had begun, she had come to see her new arm as a testament of her failures. Her failure to protect Beacon, her failure to protect her comrades, her failures to protect her friends, and her failures to protect Blake. Blake, she thought longingly. Yang, come on, breakfast is almost ready. Tai Yang yelled from the bottom of the stairs, snapping Yang from her thoughts. The blonde shook her head. This wasn't the time to think about her partners. I'm coming, she yelled back. Picking up her prosthetic, she brought the opening to her right arm, placing it into the connector that sat on her stump. She twisted it a few times before hearing a click that told her the arm was secure. She walked over to her closet to change into her normal everyday attire. Opening the door, she reached out and grabbed herself a new set of fresh clothes. After having changed out of her sleeping attire and pulling her hair into a ponytail, Yang turned to her mirror to make sure everything was in order. She frowned when her eyes settled upon the unsightly thing that was her new arm. Every time she looked at the thing now, her stomach turned in disgust. However, something was different this time. She squinted her eyes as she moved closer to get a better look at what had changed. That's when she saw that her eyes were no longer their usual soft lilac color. Now they were a harsh, deep crimson. Yang blinked several times. She moved closer still to make sure she wasn't seeing things. Usually when her eyes were crimson, it was either because her semblance was active or she was really angry about something. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath to calm herself down so she could return her eyes to their normal colors. When she opened her eyes again, she was met with the same cold red eyes. Well, this is new. Breakfast is ready. Yang looked over to her doorway and then back to her mirror. She gave a tired sigh as she started to walk over to the entrance of her room. When she came to the doorway, she was startled by a loud, deep, throaty call outside her window. Yang snapped her head back towards the window, only to find a black bird perched on a branch in front of her window. She recognized this bird. This bird has been coming and sitting in that exact same spot for months now. Was it watching her? No. No way. Why would a bird be watching me? That makes no damn sense. And then again, plenty of things have been happening around me. It doesn't make sense. Shaking her head, she raised her eyes back up to look at the bird's strange red eyes. She wasn't even aware that birds could have red eyes. As she continued to look at the black Rovidae's eyes, it apparently took notice of this and shifted its gaze slightly up to meet Yang's. A small shiver went down her spine as the bird's eyes locked onto hers. It was as if this creature was peering deep into her soul, silently judging her with its gaze. I think I'm going crazy. It's just a damn bird. There's no possible way he has the intellect to judge me, she quietly muttered. The bird had let out in response to the young huntress in training, as if it completely understood what she said. Now be quiet, you. You don't need to get your feathers so ruffled. What did I just say, you noisy bird? Before she could think of a response, her brain had caught up with the whole situation and told her just how ridiculous this whole thing was. I think I actually have gone crazy. I'm having an argument with a bird of all things, she thought as she held her left hand over her eyes. Whatever, I need to get downstairs before Dad decides to annoy me. The bird silently watched the blonde make her way out of her room, lifted its wings and with a mighty flap sent itself airborne. It flew around the wooden house until it decided to land on a branch that gave it a good view through the kitchen window to see Yang taking a seat and begin her meal. When Tai Yang came into view, his crimson eyes glowed. He was trying to talk to his daughter, but it seemed she was more interested in picking at her food. Some minutes had passed and Yang was putting away her dishes. The raven hopped 3 times over to the right to get a better look and to keep Yang within his line of sight. After a few moments, the bird has decided it was time to go. It jumped into the air and began to beat its wings. As it flew through the sky, it turned its head back to the Xiaolong residence. After a few seconds, it brought its gaze forward once more. The bird would return. It would always come back.